Okay, so more in person than I was expecting, but good. And let's see. I posted the criteria for the project, and the last week of class will be time to work on the project. So we'll have 2 weeks when we get back. 1 week will be more normal, I think, in labs, but the last week will just be time to work on the project, and then the project is due just before midnight of Friday of that week, so December 10th. So I'm giving it to you now, so it can be done over break if you want, but I am giving you time in that last week. So, what should this project have? First, it should have some theme or subject. It should not just be click a button for the sake of clicking a button, but it should all sort of hang together and be about something. There should be some kind of, I'm just going to call it a screen, which is some kind of menu to take me to at least 2 other parts of your project. So we're going to do something like that today. We also did something like that when we did the bottom navigation. So I'm having issues with the bottom navigation after something got, there was a little bit of an update, but not a complete update. And so I'm stuck in some kind of crazy limbo in the computers in the lab. If you're working on your laptop, you're perfectly fine. But what I'm teaching today is just simple basic activities, and I can make it work in the lab computers. So you have your choice of what I do today or what we did, I guess, maybe 2 weeks ago with the bottom navigation. So some kind of menu and at least 2 screens where there's something more than menu. There should be some kind of data behind it. We have our regular sort of text, CSV or other delimiter file. We have XML. We have JSON. So there should be at least some kind of data that involved in your project. If what suits your project the data requires no parsing, it's just a bunch of descriptions of, I don't know, movies or characters or products or what have you, then there should be, then the code, there won't be much code for parsing the file, but instead then there should be like multiple files for, choosing the file as you change the product or character or movie or what have you. So it's possible for that to be files that you don't necessarily have to parse, but if it's files you don't have to parse, then there should be many files. So then the code is in the choosing of the file. Okay, there should be something obtained from the web. So it can be some data, some JSON posted somewhere on the web, read an API, have an image you get from the web, go over to a YouTube video. There should be something where you're accessing the internet. Somewhere in these 2 pages with interaction, it's not listed. Well, I'm just saying page like it's a web page. There should be somewhere on these 2 interactive screens, but it can be more than 2. But somewhere there should be a spinner, and somewhere there should be a button. And then you must have at least 2 other types of sort of widget that is a way for the user to enter something. So either an edit text or a checkbox, radio button, seek bar, whatever you want there, calendar view, something to get input from from a user, and something should happen with that input. Not just have an edit text that does nothing, but an edit text where they can enter some text and then you do something with it, or check some choices and you do something with it. Add one of the other things that you don't see but are there, like a sensor or a media player or a timer. And so if you're stuck, then just add some sound effect to when it starts up or when they click a button or something. Just do one of those sort of more, you don't see it on the interface, but it does something, a timer, a media player, a sensor. Okay. There should be some kind of logic, not just sort of say, they enter some data and you say, here's the data you entered. There should be some little bit of logic where you are responding to what they do more than just repeating it back. And then there should be some kind of shared preference. So something that you remember that they save and that you utilize the next time. So those are the criteria. So I will sort of put them down in a spreadsheet and assign them points, I don't know, 4 or 5 points. And if you don't do it, then you will lose those points. If you attempt it, but it's not working, you can comment it out and get some of those points. If it's, good job that, suits your project and it's coded properly, then you'll get all the points. And I'm usually not too stingy, but sometimes I'm a little stingy. So it should, it's not just a pure, basically it's a demo piece, but it's not a pure demo piece of just like, here's my button, click event and do nothing more. It's supposed to sort of actually do something. So if it actually does something and has these features, you can expect low to mid 90s. I'm kind of stingy sometimes on projects, so I don't often give 100, but it's easy to get into the 90s or the high 80s if you just pay attention to the list. Are there any questions? If you had an idea in mind of all semester long, this is what I've been wanting to do for a project and it doesn't fit this, then we can meet in person or in Zoom and we can negotiate that you want to do something else. I had somebody one time really into like text to speak kind of stuff and wanted to do that. So I can sort of take out 1 or 2 things that didn't suit that project if you're doing something beyond what was taught in the course. So that can be negotiated. All right. So that is the project. I want to show you the other way other than bottom navigation. And bottom navigation is fine. It's just I'm having some issues on it in the lab. So if I resolve those and find that lab will still be due. If not, then I'll have to have a lab that's dropped, and it can be that lab or it can be another lab, because I have people who have computers that don't have enough memory to do this stuff on their laptop, or they don't have a laptop. So I've got to assume that there are people who only use the lab computers. And so my issues with bottom navigation, I'll have to do something about. But either I'll resolve it or I'll have a dropped lab. I'll let you know sort of next week. All right. But here is a different way to have multiple activities. So start off with an empty activity, hello world, and in the labs you have to play some games with the Gradle, more games than just change the 31s to 30s that we've been doing, but another change to the Gradle. and the dependencies. That is working so far. But if you set up a hello world and then you're up in the code region, then you can right click and add a new activity, empty activity. I've already done that, so you can see more than just my main activity here. But that is the first step. And that will give you two things. Too many things. When you're adding an activity, it's going to give you the XML layout, and it's going to give you the Kotlin, the KT. So when I did it the first time and added straight line depreciation, it gave me this. So I gave it a name, and then it gave me these two things with related names: the activity underscore straight underscore line underscore depression or depreciation, DPR, and up here the related file. So it gave me those two things sort of automatically when I said, give me a new empty activity. And the other thing to pay attention to is I want to have like a back button that takes me to the like main activity. They're called things. And so for that, you want to, when I add an activity, it adds an activity tag. It added this straight line depreciation activity tag in the AndroidManifest. But my back button won't work unless I announce that main activity is the parent. So the person's going, the main activity is going to come up first. It's going to be what they see when the application launches. And then, but I have to announce that it is also that main activity is the parent of the straight line depreciation. And then my sort of back button code will work. Okay. So there's an easy sort of like way to write a back button, but it's you must define the parent. Okay. So those are my images. Let's start looking at the code. And I added some shared preference to give us some shared preference practice, and also to sort of share information between the two activities. That's not what I want to do. I want to download. Okay, so here is the main saved. And okay, so let me start up. I'll copy in some code, but I'll start up one from scratch. I'm on my laptop, so I don't need to do the Gradle editing. Okay. So I'll make some new project, empty activity. I'll call it multi-demo. Kill that one. It's probably somebody's test. Okay. My Gradle is syncing. And okay, so I have here my main activity, and I'll just leave that as main activity, but I'm going to right click here and say I'm going to add a new activity, empty activity. I'm going to call it, I'll call it straight line depreciation. Good enough. So that added a KT file, and that added an XML here. And I'm going to add another one for a different kind of depreciation. So new activity, empty activity, and this will be double declining depreciation. Okay, so I gave me my code, it gave me my XML. Okay. Now let me get my layouts. So one of them is let me get the activity main, which is 2 buttons. Here's 2 buttons. So that is my sort of menu of, and what did I just copy? Did I copy everything? No, I just copied the buttons. Okay. So there are the buttons copied over here. That was activity main. The double declining. Let me get the text view. I'm copying. I'm not copying the constraint layout. I'm copying everything inside the constraint layout. And that was straight line, I think. That was a straight line, yes. And pasting that in there, and then the double declining. And pasting that in here. Okay, so I should now have my designs. Let me go over to main activity. I don't think I named everything the same, so I might have to do a little work. So here are my KT files. And let me do main activity. I have 2 buttons. Find 2 buttons from the interface and make click events. Okay, and now I think I named my classes slightly differently. So it's saying I don't know what you mean by button. That's Alt-Enter. That's easy enough. Intent is an Alt-Enter. And then I named my class slightly differently. So I called it SL DEPR. So now that connects to this class up here. And then this was, I called it DD underscore DPR. Okay. So here's my button. I'm on my main activity. That's sort of my menu. I have a button For going over to the straight line depreciation, that has to match that class name. And here's another button. And again, that has to match the class name. Okay. What else? So then straight line depreciation. I'm gonna copy everything but the package. See how we do. And same thing for double declining. And this is calling for an activity, and I changed the name of the activity. So I need to fix that. DD depreciation. And I should have similar thing on straight line, I think. No, I didn't. I think I copied in the wrong place. Main activity should have been the buttons, and I screwed it up. Copied that straight line code over the button, over the main activity code, sorry. So I'm repasting over main activity. And again, this is the SL depreciation and the double declining depreciation. And then straight line. Okay. And I have some things, since I changed names, I have some things too. Okay. So I call this straight line depreciation this time. And the activity was activity SL depreciation. So let me get my names consistent. So the class and the file name and the activity match. Let me go over to double declining here. Let me get the name to match. I like when the names match the file names. And there's the activity. And okay, so let's start talking about this now that it's set up. Let's see if it runs. And then I'll talk about it. And any day now, it will finish building. Okay, so here's my main activity, which is just 2 buttons taking me to other screens. Straight line depreciation takes me to this place where I have some initial value, some salvage value, some lifetime, and I generate a depreciation schedule. And if I change this the item started at 50,000, it's clearing. I'll change my salvage value to 1,000, and maybe it's going to live for 8 years this time. And there is my straight line depreciation. I can go, here's my back button. I can go, it's not letting me go back. So I've got to look at why my back button doesn't work. All right, why didn't my back button work? Oh, I know why my back button didn't work. Because I didn't announce that the main activity is the parent. All right, so here's the activity for straight line depreciation, and my back button doesn't work because I need to announce that its parent activity name is the main activity. And same thing for my double declining depreciation. I need to announce Android parent, not quotes, colon, parent, and main activity. So let me try it again. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to straight line depreciation. It remembered my 50,000, my 1,000, and my 8 because I have some shared preference stuff. And so there's my schedule. And now I'm going to go back. And I can go back because main activity is the parent of this. And back means go to my parent. So it's not remembering a history. It's just, you're just announcing who the parent is. So going back means go to the parent. There's a double declining method. I have them sharing. That's why it's shared preference. They're sharing these shared preference. So this data is filling in here, but there's a different calculation for double declining. And I didn't give myself 2 decimal places, so you could do a better job than me. Okay, so I have it set up and working. Your job for the lab will be to add one more activity, the same method you added before, the sum of the years, that other depreciation method, which you sum the number of the years. Okay, so let's look at the code again. So here is the buttons and the main activity, just taking us to a new intent. And so we've gone to a new intent before. We've gone to a new intent when it was YouTube, and now it's just an intent that we made. So it's an activity intent. Okay, so here's the straight line button. We're defining the intent. You give a package, which is just this. And then here's my class, SL depreciation. And it says class Java, even though it's in Kotlin. Okay, and the other button is doing the same, but going to the double declining depreciation class. Okay. The XMLs, there's sort of nothing to it, just standard old XMLs. So you know what that looks like. Let's look at straight line depreciation. And what do I have? Some imports, everything sort of, I never typed this stuff. It just sort of maybe Alt Enter, and then it figures it out. I am above on create. I have a few things above on create because I'm going to do an on resume as well as an on create. So there's some things I want to know about in both an on create and on resume. And so I'm going to work with my shared preferences in both. So I'm declaring shared preference here, but not initializing it. When you declare things at this sort of global level, it's often this issue of I want to declare it so I know about it in beyond on create, so much of what we've done all semester is just in onCreate, but like when we worked with sensors, we were outside of onCreate. And sometimes we've had event handlers, shared event handlers that were outside onCreate. And certain issues come up, often with something complicated. With a simple number, here are my initial salvage and life values. I'm declaring globally, probably a waste of time, but I can do it. I can give them values. They're very simple things. Things like the edit text down here and the shared preference, I can't set right away. So I can declare it and then it's going to be known, but I can't initialize it. And then you have to worry about, so in the shared preference case, I said it was null. And then I also have to make it var. A lot of these things we make val because we set it up and then we never change it. But if you're going to declare it globally and can't initialize it, and then you're going to have to change it later, then you need to make it var. So I'm establishing a shared preference. I'm not setting it up just yet, and it's got to be var so that when I'm ready to set it up, I can do it. Simple variables are easier in a situation like this. Again, var because I'm going to change them. And then we've seen this before, especially with the sensors. There are things that want to be initialized right away, but there's this word late in it to say, I know you want me to do it right away, but I'm going to do it later. And so I'm declaring this ET, this edit text ET initial. I do var instead of val because it's going to change, and I announce it with a late init to say, I know you want to initialize right away, but I can't or I won't. And so this is me sort of getting around that. Okay. So here's the onCreate. Here's this back button thing. I'm making the app. So if you look in the straight line depreciation over here in the activity, it starts with a text view that says initial value. It doesn't say, there's nothing here. You guys sometimes put things all over the place in your design, but in my design, the first thing is the top left. So this is the first thing, it's initial value. So, but when you look at the app and you're in straight line depreciation, there's this straight line depreciation. That's the action bar. Okay. So, all right. So where the hell was I? It was here. Okay. So here's what the action bar says, straight line depreciation. And then here is this back button. So this says I'm allowing myself to go home, and then don't forget the AndroidManifest part of it, which I did. Don't forget the AndroidManifest part of it by defining the parent. Okay, so that gave me this ability, this title, and this ability to go back home. Connect to buttons, connect to a button, connect to a TV schedule, connect to the edit text. No val or var here because they were declared up here. What's that going to do for me? That's going to allow me to also access them in the onResume. Okay, so no val, no var because it was above. If I do a val or a var, then it's like a new, more local variable and not the one that I intended to be more global. I am adding a listener to all of them, and it's the same listener. Because all I'm going to do is if the person types in the text box, I'm going to clear out any schedule that might have already been generated because they're changing the data. So this is I called it schedule clear. I'm clearing out the schedule. They all do the same thing when you edit the listener. Okay. Some of you get overzealous when you are, clearing out something, and sometimes you try to clear out the edit text they're typing in, and that just doesn't make sense. So make sure you are, you want to clear out some answer based on the data, but you don't want to clear out the data. And also, this was all the same code. So instead of writing it 3 times over, I just called it 3 times. And this is another one of those things that is outside of onCreate, this shared clear. I have that function defined below. Here's my shared preference. So I'm making a shared preference and establishing the editor. So this has no val or var, the shared preference, because I had it globally above. The editor is here in onCreate, and I'm just going to keep it there. Okay. Here is me reading the shared preferences. The initial is a float, the salvage is a float, the lifetime is an integer. And here are my default values in case I'm running it for the first time, or if I've wiped my data, if I have no, I call them cookies, if I have no shared preference data, these are the default values I'm going to use. Otherwise, I'm going to read in whatever I used before. So that's why when I run the thing now, I originally started with 40,000, but it remembers and I've changed it to 50,000. It remembers I changed the lifetime to 8. This is how it's bringing in that data that it remembers. And then here's me setting the interface to those values. I want to bring them in for calculational purposes, but I also want to display them. Here's my button to generate the schedule. I'm getting, they may have typed in the edit text, so I re-get initial, salvage, and life off of the interface. I'm in a try because the casting to float and int might not work. I set a value equal to initial. I figure out do my calculation for straight line depreciation. It's initial minus value divided by life. I clear out anything that was in the schedule before. I loop over the lifetime, and I keep subtracting the depreciation and displaying it, displaying the new value in the schedule. Here's me remembering my shared preference. This is me putting the cookies. Cookies always work. There's a get and there's a put. So it's a good chance that it will appear on the final. Final is really just the third test. I think it's Thursday of the finals week. And if you don't have a get and you don't have a put, then you haven't done all the work that there is for shared preferences. There's no sense in putting them unless you get them. There's nothing to get if you didn't put them. And there's this thing that's like a database commit. It is the apply. And if you don't do that, all the putting doesn't work unless you do this apply. And it's easy to forget. I know because I forgot. And then here's my catch and just says there must be a problem with the data. I think what could go wrong here is that the casting of the numbers didn't work. Here's my end of onCreate. I wrote a little on resume. I don't know if I need this or not, but I decided to have it. Here's me getting my values from shared preference on resume and putting them into the edit texts. Here is my clearing code. Here's a different approach. Now for my edit texts, I declared them, if you recall, way up here and played the late init game. For my schedule, I played a different game. I just reconnected to the interface. Also works. So I reconnected to the interface and I set the text to a bunch of dashes to clear it out. And this is my schedule clear, and all the edit text share this. Remember when the text watcher has 3 methods: before, after, and during. I'm only doing something during. double declining was the same, except the calculation is different. And what you have to do is the same, but you have to do the sum of the year's digits form of depreciation, which is the same one you did before with the bottom navigation approach. So that's what you have to do. Okay. I think I showed you everything I need to show you. Right click and new activity, empty activity. That was a thing that gave you two things. The main activity was just buttons. These things needed some back code. I had to go to the manifest and make them the parent for that to work. So that's the basic game. All right, so now you have to play the game, or maybe you're working on some older labs. I told you what the project is. I'll tell you happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to hang out and answer questions, but I'll ask, are there any questions now for the recording? No. All right, so stop recording.